Hi, good morning everybody. We are beginning our session now. My name is Rohan Chopra and I'd like to welcome you all to the Edumont classes here. I'd like to take a quick minute to introduce everybody. Right behind the camera to me is Mr. Salman, who is the Director of Photography here. And right on our home computer here on the host PC is Mr. Mohit Taneja, who is our Program Advisor. If you have any doubts, any questions related to the product, or as a customer, if you have any doubts from that perspective, please mention them in the chat box. When you put something in the chat box, Mohit will be sure to reply it. Now, if you have any questions that are related to the academic aspects, from a student's perspective, for instance, please feel free to raise your hand. Right in the middle of the screen, there is an option to raise hand. When you do that, Mohit will give you permission to unmute yourself. A dialog box will appear on your PC. Unmute yourself and then you and I will be able to communicate directly. Now, with that being said, let me quickly give you a walkthrough on what it is that we're going to do today. So firstly, we'll obviously want to get to know you and we're going to ask you a few simple questions, 3-4 questions, which will come to you in the form of a poll. In that poll, if you fill in the details, I will get to know the audience that I'm dealing with. After which, I will take you through our PowerPoint presentation, where we'll talk about what is CPA, who is US CPA, basically the what, why, when, who and how of CPA and all of the details. The PowerPoint presentation is called CPA All You Need to Know, and for that perspective, we will cover all of the details. Now, after we're done with the PPT, I will actually be teaching a topic from the CPA course syllabus as well. We've chosen a very simple topic so that everybody from all possible areas that is attending this class will get a good feeler of what the topic is and how I teach, which should enable you to make an appraisal about us. Now, let's begin. Mohit, could you please put on the polls? Could everybody please take a minute or less to answer these questions so that we can get to know our audience? And we have our responses. 38% of you are freshers and the remaining are experienced people. About 44, roughly 50% of the audience here has more than 5 years of experience, and that's a beautiful thing. That's actually great. Most of you are currently working and some of you aren't, and that's fine. And luckily enough, we have hit the exact target audience. We're looking at 100% of you are from the commerce stream. So that's beautiful. Now, let me share my screen and I will be visible on the screen. When we do this, we will run through the PowerPoint presentation. And from the perspective of people who are from the commerce stream, people who are mostly working, and people with experience, I will tailor pitch what we're doing here. Now, our slide is called Become a CPA. Please move on to the next slide, Mohit. Right, so the contents of today's presentation, very quickly I'm going to run you through them. What is CPA? About Is Cpa, the body that gives the degree. What are the top MRAs? Why is the CPA credential is in high demand? What is the exam application process? The exam pattern? How does the scoring work? Who oversees the exam, getting a license, the CPA timeline, the trajectories of careers after CPA, why should you choose Edumont, the CPA fee, contact us, and frequently asked questions. So, moving on to the first slide right here. What is CPA? Now, just as we have chartered accountancy in India, we've got the CPA qualification in America. Chartered accountancy is governed by ICAI and the CPA is governed by AICPA, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Now, CPA study 4 core subjects: financial accounting and reporting, auditing, business environment and concepts called BEC, and the 4th subject is US tax regulations, also called Reg. Now, if you look at the diagram, you can see that there are these 4 subjects mentioned here, but on top of the subjects we've mentioned auditing, financial planning and analysis, US tax advisory, and consultancy. That's because each of the 4 subjects represents a field of employment for CPAs, and these are the 4 major industries in which we will find our fields of employment. Now, let's move on to the next slide while I talk about the fact that CPAs build their careers at major multinationals, corporates from America land, and major accounting services firms such as the Big Fours all hire CPAs, and I'll talk about why in just a minute. But before I do, let's talk about Is Cpa. Now, the CPA degree or the CPA designation rather, is the highest qualification awarded by AICPA. But who is AICPA? So AICPA is the oldest and the largest accounting body in the world. To be precise, if you visit the website www.aicpa.org, you'll find it reads, "We are AICPA, American Institute of CPAs, the world's largest member association representing the accounting profession." So, from that standpoint, AICPA has a 133-year-old legacy. It's got more than 4.3 lakh members, or as the Americans call it, 430,000 members, and we're present across 130 different countries. So AICPA is a major organization and it has a lot of power in the accounting world. Moving on to the next slide, please. Right, so here are some of the top MRAs, mutual recognition agreements. Now, I said AICPA is the largest and all of those things, but to corroborate that, to give evidence to that, we'll talk about the countries where you will find it easy to find employment and where you find very strong mutual recognition agreements between AICPA and the local accounting body. You've got Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, Hong Kong, which is China, Mexico, Scotland, Australia, and South Africa. All of these countries, along with many others, have strong MRAs. For example, if I was to take up the case of Canada, if you have an American CPA, you are a Canadian CPA by default. You only have to pay an extra fee. There are no extra exams even. So if you wanted to move to Canada tomorrow after your CPA, you would be the ideal candidate for it. Such is the reach of AICPA. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So the AICPA credential called CPA, the Certified Public Accountant credential, is in high demand. Why is that? Why is the CPA credential in high demand? Well, number one, there's earning potential. Very clearly, once you're qualified as a CPA, you earn a lot more. Even in India, CPAs get paid on the same scale, if not better, than chartered accountants with the same amount of experience, except chartered accountants would have to go through a 3-year training process, and in CPA, we do not have such requirements. So you would spend considerably less time, but you'd get paid along the same pay scale. But if I was to talk internationally, beyond India, then the scope changes exponentially. The amount of salaries CPAs receive abroad are not even close to being compared as the salaries are in India. I think that's true for most professions, to be very honest, because the pay scales are pretty high up abroad, but CPAs specifically are very well paid. So earning potential is the first point. Then you've got career opportunities. You've got immense career opportunities. Imagine you're currently in India, and once you're done with your CPA with 2 to 3 years of experience, you would literally be able to apply directly for direct placements across the world. Wherever there's a US gap opening, you will be able to apply for it immediately once you have 2 to 3 years of post-qualification experience. That's all it takes. Then there's stability, flexibility, all of these points, and prestige and respect. So stability, what do I mean by stability? Well, of course, the career choices that we're making here of being a certified public accountant brings in stability in the fact that accountants will always be needed. Our profession will always be relevant no matter what happens. You may have the best software, you may have the best kit, but you will never get rid of accountants. We will always be needed. And then there's flexibility. Flexibility in terms of how you plan your studies, how you choose to give your exams. You could choose to give your exams on a day of your choice, at a time of your choice. There is no date sheet that has to be followed. You have the ability to schedule your own choices, your own exams, as per your liking, in any order that you prefer. So there's absolute flexibility. And then lastly, there's prestige and respect. Now, to be very honest, outside of India, everybody understands what a CPA is. Especially in the Western world, it's so well recognized that by being a CPA and walking through an immigration office or walking through a restaurant and talking to people who are unknown to you, If you tell them you're a CPA, they will understand exactly what it is that you do. There is a natural prestige and respect that comes attached with the degree like this. Even in India, you would find that the market for CPA and the requirement for CPA, the demand from the corporate side, is increasing. It's ever increasing. Now, there's a small number here which is written in rather bold fonts. It says 6%. It says accounting and auditing employment growth is 6% through 2028. Now, that 6% seems like a small number, but if you think about it, it's a 6% year-on-year growth, and that is a massive growth percentage. That is genuinely a huge growth potential in terms of the number of jobs for CPAs that are going to be available. And this figure is merely for the US market. It's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, USA. It's only for the American market, but imagine if the American market is expanding, the requirement for CPAs is expanding there, what happens to the Indian market, which is basically outsourcing the work from the US. So we've got a lot more potential coming through. We've got a lot more jobs opening up, and in all honesty, in the current scenario in India, you'd find that there are more CPA jobs than applicants, which is why it's actually a golden time to become a CPA, given that the exams are now in India. But we'll talk about this in a lot more detail in the upcoming slides. So please, let's move on. Let's talk about the exam application process. Very quickly, you've got to start by determining your eligibility. Then you got to submit your application, become a candidate. Finally, you'll have to schedule your exam with the help of a notice to schedule. Now, let me slowly elucidate what these points are. Number one, you're going to need to get yourself evaluated. That's because exams in India are on pen and paper, and the result is we get a percentage out of it. Now, for the percentages that we get, we need to get those converted into credit points, which are acceptable in the US. So in the US, you wouldn't get percentages. You wouldn't get 70, 80 or 90%. You would get credits for each subject that you complete successfully. So your percentages will be converted into credit points. This is the evaluation process. For the evaluation process, there are multiple routes through which you can go, but only a few are accepted across US. And our academic team here, once you enroll with us, if you enroll with us, our academic team will help navigate those rules, and they'll take you through to the right body so that the evaluation you get done is accurate and is accepted by all in the US. Now, after you've determined your eligibility, and I think I'm missing a point here, I think I should point this out, that you need at least 120 semester hour credits to give your exam, and then you need 150 to get a license. So we'll talk about what a license is and how do we get a license. But for now, let's talk about the 120 rule. Very clearly, let's talk about 120 credits needed to give your exam. What do I mean by 120 credits? So for every year of university education that you have, you would amass about 30 credits, roughly. So for instance, you've gone to college, you've done your graduation, you've done 3 years of study. So you've got 90 credits already. If you've done an MCom on top of that, for 2 years, you've got 60 more, you've got 150 credits now. Now, with that being said, does this mean that if you're a graduate, you can't be a CPA? Well, this isn't entirely true. To be precise, if you're from a NAC A college or a NAC A university and you have a first division plus, then your 3-year education is considered to be 4 years. And you are given extra 30 credits, making it equivalent to 120, because the graduation abroad is for 4 years. So in the US, graduation is for 4 years, in India it's for 3 years, but if you're from a NAC A college with a first division, you will be given 4 years worth of credits. That is how a plain graduate can also appear for the CPA exams. But with that being said, you will still need some extra credits because to get your license, you'll need 150 credits. We'll talk about the license part as soon as we get to the slide for licenses. For now, let's continue onward. You got to submit your application. You got to submit your application to NASBA, NASBA. Now, in the US, there are 50 states, and Americans won 5 territories in wars. For example, Guam is a small set of island, which is an American territory. It's next to Indonesia. It's not even in the US, but the Americans won it in the Vietnam War. the only thing they really won in the Vietnam War. And Guam, as a result, is now a territory of US. So the US has 50 states, 5 territories, 55 different state boards. You have to apply for candidature to give your exam with any one of these state boards. Could be within the US, the 50 states, or the 5 territories. Makes no difference. Makes virtually no difference, because as soon as you're done with your exams and you want to get a license, you can transfer your credits from any state to any other state with a small fee of $25. Now we'll get to that in just a second. For now, let's talk about scheduling the exams. So after you've applied for candidature with a state board, for example, New York. So you come to me, you say, Rohan, I want to go give my exams. My evaluation is done. I have 120 credits and I want to now start the process. So we'll submit your documents to NASBA, NASBA, which is the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. Like I said, there are 55 SBAs, State Boards of Accountancies. You can't be communicating with each one of them. Instead, there's a central point where you communicate, a federal body, for instance, which is called NASBA, NASBA. That's where you go and submit your application. NASBA then communicates with your state board approves your candidature, and then you're ready to give your exam after you obtain a NTS, Notice to Schedule. So, all of this said and done sounds pretty complicated, doesn't it? There's a lot of things that need to be done, and there's a lot of processes, a lot of steps in the process. But here at Edumont, our academic team will handhold you through the entire process. We'll help you with the evaluation, with getting the notice to schedule, with preparing for the exams, with identifying if you're ready for the exams and should pay the fee. We'll talk about the whole shebang from beginning to the end. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Now let's talk about the exam pattern. Now, actually the best place to talk about this is the next slide. So let's move on to the next slide. Let's talk about the exam pattern right here. If you see, there is a table towards the lower right corner. If you look at that table, and I'll explain this to you very quickly, there are 3 different types of questions that usually appear on the CPA exams. There's MCQs, TBSs, and WCTs. MCQs specifically are multiple choice questions. Multiple choice questions are questions of the format that you've seen before on like Kaun Banega Crorepati, KBC. You've got a question, you've got 4 choices to choose from. Simple as that, multiple choice question. Then the next thing is called task-based simulation. These are case study type questions where you've got to perform actual tasks that would be expected of a first year associate, and you would have more than 4 choices and you'd have more than 1 question in it. So a simulation or a TBS would actually have like 5, 6 sub questions, and each sub question would have more than 4, maybe 10 choices to choose from. But again, a TBS is an objective type question. You've got to take your mouse and click on the right choice. You do not have to manually input anything. That comes later. WCT, written communication task, the third type of questions that we see. This is a question where you need to manually input the answer in the form of an essay. Now, this is the easiest type of question for us because hum bachpan se yahi karte aa rahe hain. We've been writing essays since the day we decided to become a schooled individual in India. So we are very well versed in that art. And more importantly, the essays don't have to be very long. We got to keep them brief, got to keep them less than 500 words. So hame usme dikkat nahi hoti as Indian students. But with that being said, WCTs do not appear on all exams. WCTs are specific to the BEC exam. Now, you've got 36 MCQs in Testlet 1, 36 MCQs in Testlet 2 for audit. So before I even begin to explain audit, let me tell you there are 5 Testlets in the exam. Testlet is a group of questions. So you've got 5 Testlets. After Testlet 3, there is a break where your exam reaches the midpoint, and then there's Testlet 4 and 5 that you continue with. Testlets 1 and 2 usually have MCQs. Testlets 3, 4 and 5 have task-based simulations. There's usually 8 task-based simulations between Testlet 3, 4 and 5, but for BEC there is a difference. Okay, for BEC, there is a difference. In Testlet 5 for BEC, you'll find that there are 3 WCTs instead of simulations. So BEC is slightly different in the fact that it only has 4 task-based simulations, but it has 3 WCTs. Right. Now, if you take a look here at the table, you'll find that BEC runs on a slightly different pattern, but everything else has a fairly similar pattern with 8 simulations. Now, number of MCQs do differ across the different exams. For example, Audit, FAR and Reg have different number of MCQs, but the scope of difference is fairly simple, limited, or it's a couple of questions. So it's not a major shift. The major shift is only in BEC, where you've got WCTs in the last testlet. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Right, how does the scoring work? More importantly, right? And इसमें एक question और है which I know some people will ask or some people will be thinking of but won't actually ask, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. But let's talk about the scoring here first. You need to get a 75 percentile to become a CPA. So you need to get a 75 percentile. What does that mean? A percentile is different from a percentage. A percentage is the number of accuracies that you've gotten in your questions. So for example, if there are 100 questions and I get 75 of them correct, I've got a 75 percentage. But in a percentile system, things are different. In a percentile system, your score is judged against a set benchmark. So there are 2 key things that are used to determine your score. Number 1 is the level of difficulty of your exam. The more difficult you are, or the more difficult the exam is for you, the better your score will be. And the second thing is, of course, the accuracy percentage that you receive. You got difficult questions, but you got all of them wrong. There is nothing to be gained here. You got difficult questions, you got most of them right. Your percentage is limited, but your percentile shoots up. Your percentile would shoot up in that situation. So it's a percentile system. But with that being said, nobody on earth realistically can tell you, except for the guys who work at AICPA, can realistically tell you exactly how the scoring is measured, because the exam is checked by a computer system. It's not checked by a human. But with that being said, the global pass percentage for AICPA is about 50%. Now when you compare this to our closest competitor here in India, which is Chartered Accountancy, you would find way ahead in terms of our pass percentage, because for Chartered Accountancy you wouldn't even have a 10% pass rate. CA is pretty tough. It's pretty exceptional if somebody clears it in their first go. But for CPA, things are different. You got a 50% global pass rate. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Oh, before I even move on to the next slide, I want to talk about the Elijah Watt-Sells Award. People who receive a 95.5 above in all exams and clear their exams in one go are eligible to receive the Elijah Watt-Sells Awards, and it is quite an honor to receive this award. I myself am not a recipient of this award, but I do covet it, except it's too late. I can't go and now reappear for my exams, but it would have been great if I had this award. Sure, let's move on. Right, who oversees the exam? So we've got 3 basic parties here that I want to talk about: AICPA, NASBA and Prometric. I have already covered AICPA and NASBA to quite an extent. NASBA is the central body for you to be able to communicate with all of the state boards, or all 55 of the state boards. Instead of having to do it separately, you could do it at a central point called NASBA. And NASBA is the body where you would essentially apply and track your application. Now, AICPA is the body that gives you your degree, your qualification, your designation, your certification. Prometric is the testing body. So your exams would be conducted at a Prometric center near you. Now, Prometric is fairly common. Actually, it's a well-known entity. Especially if any of you have given a GMAT exam ever, or a GRE exam, you would have had to go to Prometric center. So, or if you've given a CMA exam, you'd have to go to Prometric center. So Prometric is the testing body. This is the place where you would visit. Their system you would use to give your exam. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So let's get a license. Now, after you've cleared your exams and you've become a CPA in so many ways, you're still not a CPA. You would still need a license. Now, a lot of people get confused in this. A lot of people think I've cleared all 4 of my exams. I should be a CPA now, right? No, that's not how it works. You got to clear all 4 of your exams, but then you also need to get a license. There are 4 requirements to getting a license. Firstly, let's talk about education. So I was harping on about 120 credits and then 150 credits. Here's where 150 credits are needed. To get a license, you need 150 credits. Through most of the state boards, you need 150 credits. And then you need 1 year of experience. And then you need to clear all 4 of your exams also. And then you may be required to give an optional ethics exam. It may be required, it may not be, because different state boards have different rules. Some mandate an ethics exam and some mandate ethics training. There's a difference. Now, this is how you would end up getting a license. But let's say you're stuck in a situation where you have 120 credits and that's all you have. You do not wish to go and apply for an MCOM. You do not wish to do more than that. How does this work? Well, in that case, there are only 2 state boards right now which allow for the 120 rule. There is a 120 rule as well. 120 rule says you could have 120 credits, that's fine, but instead of 1 year of work experience, you would need to have 2 years of work experience. So that's the small modification there, and then you could get through to the 120 rule, or you could get through with a license with 120 credits. But I always recommend getting your 150 credits. An MCOM is fairly easy. It gets the thing done. You only have to give the exams online. You do not even have to study very hard for it. But once you're done with it, then you could have licenses from state boards like California or New York or any of the well-known names that you may have heard of. Let's also talk about the fact that why do you need a license? Of course, you need a license to call yourself a CPA, but the real use of a license is similar to that of a certificate of practice for chartered accountants. Just like CAs have a certificate of practice, we have the license, but you would need the license. The COP is voluntary in India. You could choose to have it, choose not to have it. The license is not voluntary, it's mandatory. Especially if you're an international candidate, which all of us are. International candidates have a period of 3 years after clearing all of their exams to get a license, or your credits will start lapsing. So you need to apply for a license within 3 years. Now, with that being said, so you've got a license. What do you need it for? What's the point? So if you're an auditor and you need to sign off on a balance sheet, the only thing that gives you jurisdiction in a region is the regional license. So say for example, I've got a client in California. I'm auditing that client. That client is a SEC client. The client is filing with the SEC. And at the end of the year, they come to me, they say, Mr. Rohan, I'd like you to sign off on my audit report. I would only be able to sign off on that report if I have a license from California. Let's say I don't have a license from California, I have a license from New York or from Washington. And now the client is in California. I would not be able to sign off on his report. To work around this, what major firms do is they have partners with regions predetermined. So what would happen is any person could hold multiple licenses. There is no limit on how many licenses you can hold. But what they do is they'd say, okay, we have a northeast and a east and a northwest and whatever. We've got different partners from different regions, and each partner holds 3 to 4 licenses. This way I would have a partner in the firm who would have a license in California. So then I would say I can't sign it off personally, but my partner here can. This is how we work around it usually, and the idea is license is needed primarily for signing off on audit reports. Now, let's say you want to do a job, you want to work at a KPMG or a EY or a PwC or a JP Morgan or whatever you want to do. You want to work with a major multinational corporation. Do you need a license? Yes, because without a license, you're not a CPA. Do you need a license from a specific state? No. In your interview, you will be asked if you have a license, but you will never be asked where that license is from. That question comes when you reach a partner level, when you reach the level where you are required to sign off on reports. Only then would you really need a license from the jurisdiction of your clients. Otherwise, any license will do as long as you have a license. Let's move on to the next question, please. The next slide, sorry. Let's talk about the CPA timeline. So, we recommend a 12-month timeline. We say all you need is 12 months to become a CPA. But how does this work? So very specifically, you've got audit, FAR, Reg and Bec. Audit requires a month and a half for training and a month for self-study. So it requires 2.5 months to prepare for. Then there's FAR. You need 2 months for training in FAR and then another month and a half for self-study. So you need 3.5 months for FAR. Then there's Reg, which requires 2 months for training, 2 months for self-study. That's 4 months of preparation time. Bec is the easiest of the lot, the smallest of the lot, the least lengthy, and as a result it only needs 2 months, a month of training, a month of self-study. Add it all together, your total is 12 months. Now, what we recommend is studying for 2 subjects at the same time in a combination. You got to go for audit and FAR because audit and FAR have a natural interlap. Financial accounting and reporting and audit go hand in hand. Okay, so I just received a question here: for working professionals, these timelines feasible or not? Okay, I will tell you, sir, absolutely. So, firstly, let me continue on with the chain of thought that I had, and then I'll get to your question. You need to study for audit and FAR together because there's a natural interlap. Accounting and reporting जो करोगे उसी की audit होनी है. So the two of them have a natural intersection, and about 20% of the course syllabus between the two is actually the same. तो फायदा मिलता है by doing them together. The best place to start is FAR and then audit. Then there's Reg and Bec. The both of them are not linked in together, but Reg is a heavy subject, especially for people who do not like to learn or memorize things, because Reg will require you to memorize few things. We don't really have to recognize the section numbers or the law sections because we don't get tested along those lines, but you would probably need to remember the limits, the thresholds, etc. And then there's BEC, which is the easiest of the lot. So the hardest paper and the easiest paper together give a complement to each other, so you could study those together. Now, for the question that I've been asked, let me give you a long answer here. Okay, so let me give you a long answer here. For all my students who do come to study with me, I have always given the following advice. For every hour of study that you do on the book, spend 3 hours in the online test bank practicing the questions. So the ratio is 1:3. Now, to be very clear about this, what I mean by this advice of 1:3 is the most important thing in the preparation of CPA is not the theory. It is in fact practicing the questions. So on the weekends when you attend the class with us, we'll get the concepts through to you and you'll have your own notes specifically made and you will be able to quickly revise through them in the week. But the biggest thing after understanding the concept is to apply it. So practice is the biggest point here. Now, with that being said, 2 hours on a daily basis is all you need if you're regular with your Sunday, Saturday classes. So your weekend classes on Saturday and Sunday, if you're regular with those and you go through the concepts with me with full concentration, you will get them instantly. It won't be a hassle at all. Concept aap samajh loge. Then when you go back home during the week, then you got to put in 2 hours on a daily basis, and those 2 hours need to be divided in 2 parts. Half of it, one third of it, or 1/4 of it rather, goes into theory, and 3/4 go into practicing the online test bank. So आपने question उठाया और उसका practice किया. So it starts basically like this. For example, during the Saturday Sunday session, we completed chapter 1 of FAR. So now chapter 1 of FAR would have like 7-8 subsections, and you've got 7 days or 6 days before the next class comes through to complete these tasks. So to complete these tasks or to complete the questions, what you would do is you would quickly open up the book, go through the pages that we've done, highlight what is important or revise what has already been highlighted, and then close it. Keep it on the side. Then we want you to spend the remaining hour and a half of the 2 hours, that is 3/4 of the time, in practicing the questions. So these timelines are absolutely feasible for working professionals, provided you put in your 2 hours on a daily basis. इसमें कंसिस्टेंसी बहुत ज़रूरी है. अगर आप वो 2 घंटे में कंसिस्टेंसी नहीं ला पाते and you end up delaying your study for a day, or you end up thinking, oh, do I need to study today? Today is a break day for me, and you're not consistent, then these timelines won't work. But if you are consistent and dedicated, you can put in 2 hours on a daily basis. This timeline works spot on for everybody. because when you're training with me, you are also studying during the week. So this 12 months of study is enough to make you a CPA. Let's move on to the next slide, please. I hope I've adequately answered your question. Career trajectories. So here are the various career trajectories. Before I even started off on this PPT, the first slide I showed you, we talked about the 4 paths that we can choose. You could be an auditor, you could be a financial accounting and reporting expert, you could be a tax advisor, or you could be a business consultant with BEC. So audit, FAR, Reg and Bec. These are the 4 areas that we choose. To begin with, on an average scale, you're very welcome to read through these graphs on your own, but to begin with, on an average scale, when you got 0 experience, the starting salaries are from 6 to 8 lakhs, and then with about 15 to 20 years of experience, the average salary is 1 crore plus for the year. So that works around through all 4 of these career trajectories, but there are differences, smaller differences. For example, to get into consultancy, you need at least 3+ years of experience to begin with. You need to be a 3-year qualified individual. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, please. Classes at Edumont. Excellent point here I would like to raise. So what we do here at Edumont is, we've got this camera that is looking at me right now, and right behind me is a whiteboard which we showed to you while we were starting, and we'll move back down to the whiteboard as soon as the PPT is done for. What we do here is, imagine you're sitting in a classroom, you've got all your friends next to you or your classmates next to you, and you've got a teacher who's teaching you on a whiteboard. You could raise your hand, you could ask them questions, you could interject in the middle, you could do all of those things in a classroom. The exact same experience is being translated into your computer now. Thanks to COVID and the fact that we all realize we've got to be able to do this over the internet, we've come up with a system that allows us to have the exact same experience of a classroom, but on your laptop at the convenience of your home. Even in this session, you would be able to raise your hand, you would be able to unmute yourself, you would be able to talk to me directly, and you would always be able to ask questions on chat. So similarly, in an actual class, if you have a request, you would raise your hand, the teacher would allow you, and you would speak. Same works here. Now, what's truly special about our system is the fact that we've got an all-week round training. So on Saturdays and Sundays, we've got 4-hour classes each, and we want to teach you the concepts from a particular chapter, from a particular subtopic on the weekends. But then during the week, on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 to 11 in the night, after you've come back from work or after you finished your work, we will have a 1-hour session on Tuesday and on Thursday, in which we will discuss the questions from the online test bank, the actual questions. So this way you will be able to understand not just the concepts, but how to apply the concepts. Solving the MCQ questions has a certain amount of tricks to it. Most institutions will not bother with those tricks. They would leave you to find your tricks on your own, build your own system. But we here have a set study pattern, a set system, and we also like to share the tricks of how to solve questions or eliminate the wrong choices and get to the right one with you on a weekly basis. Another great benefit of having a week-round training is the fact that you are focused around the week on CPA. So even though it becomes cumbersome, you will always be thinking of CPA because your class is right around the corner on the next day or a day after. Now, for people who are working, I do understand that you will not necessarily be available at the times that we want or the times that I'm comfortable with. So every class is recorded. Every class is recorded and is available to you in the LMS, Learning Management System. We've got a user-friendly LMS and all the classes are covered there. You can watch it at your own convenience, at your own time. You could build your own schedule, your own study pattern, and you could still get through it. Okay, let's move on to the next plus. So we want to talk about why should you choose Edumont, and I want to quickly run through these slides because, well, why you should choose Edumont is a decision you would have to take. We can only talk about the points that we've thought of. So first of all, we've got live classes direct to home. So we've got live classes, this is a live event, and we've got a whiteboard. So we've got live classes direct to home which are instructor led. Our faculties are CPA and CMA qualified, all of them, and then we've got access to international seminars, and more importantly, language is not a barrier. I know I've been speaking a lot of English, but agar kisi ko baat nahi samajh aati, I am very fluent in Hindi too. So I make it a point to make sure that everybody who's sitting in my webinar, 20-30 people, whoever they are, they get through and get the entire concept. So language is no barrier. We're bilingual in that sense. Then there's most comprehensive training online. We are the most comprehensive training online because we've got an all week round training. Like I told you, we do 10 hours each week over 27 weeks, which is 270 hours of training. This is the absolute most in the industry. You do not need more, but less is not nice. Having this amount of training is the appropriate amount of training. Now let's move on to the next, please. Oh, before I even forget to mention this, let me say this. We've got a compendium of CPA notes that are authored by me. We use these books as study notes. So we've got Wiley as our academic partner, and I'd like to talk about Wiley here. This is not the regular Wiley. This is John Wiley and Sons, the American company, which is 200 years old. So to put it in perspective, it's older than our democracy. The company is older than our Indian democracy. It's 200 years old. It's been publishing Nobel laureates, and it is a major company. It's publicly traded. इसका $1 का share US में $50 पे trade करता है. So it's trading at a 50 multiple. But with that being said, they are the absolute best along with other systems. I would name a few. I would say Beckers is great, Rogers is great, Wiley is great. All of these guys are awesome. Now, I would like to warn you about a malpractice that has been going on in the industry, and I do not like to name names, but I will tell you this very clearly. We have a competition, we have a competing agency that likes to claim that their material is Wiley material, but they say it in this fashion. They say our material is published by Wiley. Now please do not fall for this trick. Their material is published by Wiley. That does not mean that they've got Wiley material. It is still their homegrown Indian material that gets published by Wiley, because Wiley India, which is a subsidiary of John Wiley and Sons, the company we've tied up with, it's a printing house. So if you went to it and said, I want my book printed and I'm willing to pay your per page cost, they would print your book just like any other publishing house, and they would put their stamp on it. But that does not mean that this material is from John Wiley and Sons US. The material is Indian. We here offer the John Wiley and Sons material, the Wiley USA material, which has its own online test bank with more than 2,000 questions per subject, more than 500 simulations. With that being said, this is the world-class material, because when the Wiley US people build something, they usually hire CPA, CMA, PhDs who've got more than 20 years of experience and who've been teaching at universities like UCLA. So Ore Whittington, one of the writers, is a PhD with 20 years of teaching experience. When people like Ore Whittington are writing books, their research, their understanding of the AICPA course content and how it's tested is immense. They make a test bank, there are no mistakes with it. You find homegrown materials in India that are built by Indian CPAs, they're always iffy, they're always prone to mistakes. और अगर आपके टेस्ट बैंक में एक भी गलती है ना, and you know कि गलती है इसमें, every time you make a mistake in a question, you will wonder, आप गलत कर रहे हो या आपका टेस्ट बैंक खराब है. So you do not want to fall into that rut. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Before we do, just hold on a second, Mohit. We've got access till you pass in Wiley. This is another great feature that I want to talk about. We come with a lifetime commitment essentially. Once you pay your fee to us, you do not have to pay your fee ever again to us. Simply because we've got access till you pass. Your materials will be updated. Your coaching will continue till you pass. So in the unfortunate event where you do end up failing an exam because of some reason, you didn't follow our advice, or you did follow our advice, you just got unlucky, or you were having a bad day, you weren't well, but whatever reason there may be, if you do end up failing the exam, you do not have to burden about the fact कि यार मेरी fees बर्बाद हो गई, I have to pay it again. ऐसा नहीं है. You're covered for life with us. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Next slide, please. Right. So why Choose Edumont? We've designed to keep you focused, and we've got a user-friendly online tool. Just to very quickly talk about this, we're designed to keep you focused because we've got a all-week-round training. And again, there is nobody else in the market who would do 2 sessions in a week of the online test bank. And like I said, when I tell my students how to study, I always say split your time in the ratio of 1:3. 3 being the time spent on the test bank. That is the most important part of becoming a CPA. That is the most important place where you actually study. Theory पढ़ लेने से बात नहीं बनेगी, theory apply करनी पड़ेगी. So from that standpoint, we're designed to keep you focused, and all of the things that you have here that I'm speaking of are being recorded and will be uploaded to the online learning management system, the online LMS. We also have a forum in the LMS. It's called Ask Your CPA. So of course you'll be able to call up your teacher directly and talk to them, but sometimes you are studying at odd hours, like at 2 in the night, because you're a working professional and this is the only time you've got. So if you're studying at 2 at the night, you wouldn't really want to call anybody up, right? So you have a place where you can put in the question and receive an answer for it. So you got Ask Your CPA forum, where you'll type in your question, select the appropriate subtopic, put in the appropriate type of question and get a response. Okay, let's move on to the next question, please. Okay, why choose Edumont? Because we've got proactive assistance with AI CPA pre-enrollment formalities and post-qualification critical support. So of course, like I said in the beginning, the rules to become a CPA, the 55 state boards, each one of the state boards has its own rules or small variations in the rules, and for you to have to go through all 55 of the sets of rules and to decide where to apply, that would be an immense burden on you. So we've decided to take on that burden head on, and we will provide proactive assistance to you. So you will know which state board to apply with, which state board will accept what evaluation, how do you get that evaluation done, what are the documents you need to collect, everything gets covered by us. And then you've got post-qualification critical support, where the idea is fairly simple. After you have qualified, you will need assistance in getting a license, you will need assistance in probably getting a job. Although to be very honest, if you become a CPA with a license, finding a job is not an issue. But why should you sit on Naukri.com when we have the ability to provide you with the absolute latest updates in the industry? So thanks to the connects that we have with the industry, on a personal level, I've got friends working almost everywhere, or ex-students working everywhere, in major big fours or major corporates like Accenture, etc. We always keep our ear to the ground. We always stay updated on the latest job openings for CPAs, and once you become an alumni, we will add you to a WhatsApp group. We will take your latest CV, we will post the jobs there. All you have to do is swipe on it and say yes. When you say yes, we will apply with your CV on your behalf. This becomes easier than applying for a job on Naukri or LinkedIn or anywhere else. It's a WhatsApp group, all you gotta do is say yes and we'll apply for you. It's that simple. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Now, let's talk about the CPA fee, and I want to talk about this more quickly, because I'm not really a fee guy, to be very honest. For that, I think the best person to talk to is Mohit. I rarely like to talk fee, but I will give you an easy breakdown here. You got our fee, which is $119,830. Then you've got the fees for the exams. So first you got to do is you got to give $300 to the foreign agency for your evaluation. So that's the first expense you incur. That's your evaluation. So let me get on the side here. Let me see if this helps. Yeah. So you've got your foreign evaluation for which you've got to spend $300, which is about $22,500. Then you've got $2,400 for your exam fee. Well, if you give your exams in the US, you only have to pay $950, but there is an additional $1,426 worth of international testing fee if you give your exams in India or in Dubai or in Japan, essentially anywhere outside the US. So if you're giving your exams outside of the US, then in that case you gotta pay the extra fee. But let me say this unequivocally, it is worth it. अगर आपको यूएस जाके देना पड़ गया एग्जाम, तो आपको जेट लैग होगा सबसे पहले, तो एटलीस्ट एक हफ्ता जेट लैग रिकवर करने में लगेगा, टाइम जोन की डिफरेंस की वजह से. You'll have to spend time there, you'll have to spend money there. The flight tickets alone will be worth $1,426. And when you go to the US, you'll be under pressure, so you'll have to give all 4 of your exams in one go. In India, you can drive down to the nearest parametric center, give your exam on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, whenever you're free, as per your convenience. And you can break the exams down to 1-1-1-1 style, right? Instead of giving 2 + 2 or all 4 together, you could break it down into 1 each. Now, I do want to talk about the fact that for our fee, we're slightly more expensive than some of the cheapest competitors in the market, but we're cheaper than some of the most expensive competitors in the market. So we're sort of in the middle. That's down to the fact that we've built our price in a way to be pocket friendly, but we also use the highest quality materials. So our cost of goods sold is naturally higher than the rest of the audiences that have their own homegrown material. क्योंकि मेरी cost of goods sold higher है, मेरी total cost to you, my selling price is also a little higher. Now let's move on to the next slide, please. This is how you contact us. Well, honestly speaking, you've already been in touch with Mohit, and he is our program advisor. He's also answering your questions on the chat, I see. So you should ideally just get in touch with him. But again, both of these numbers are available to you. This PPT is also available to you. If you don't have it, please let us know in the chat. We will send it to you. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Oh, and by the way, if you do want to visit us, we're based out of Delhi. We've got an office in Saket. Please feel free to let us know that you'll be coming to the office so that we can make the necessary arrangements. Also, because of the COVID issue, most of our people are working from home. So be sure to give us a call and we will be there. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, we've got some FAQs and I do not want to discuss these FAQs. These FAQs are for you to read. Most of these have already been discussed in the PPT here. Let's move on to the next one. Again, FAQs. These are top FAQs from AICPA, both of these slides, and you're very welcome to go through them. And if you already know the answers to these FAQs, then this session has been worth it because you've understood what our points are. If you don't or feel confused, please feel free to read these last two slides. They are beneficial from a candidate standpoint. With that, we reach the conclusion of our PPT, our PowerPoint presentation. And I would like to open this up for questioning. If there is any questions that relate to me, relate to the academics of things, please, now is the time to ask your questions. Simply raise your hand and we will let you through. Any questions, Mohit? No. None. All right. We've got two questions in the Q&A section. Okay, so somebody asked me here, if someone not cleared the exam in 18 months, what happens? How many CPAs do we produce annually is another question I've been asked. Okay, I'm going to answer these. And I've also been asked, are these Wiley materials same as that of Miles or are they different? I hope this question, that they are different, has been addressed properly. They are extremely different. These are built from the US office of Wiley and they're built by PhDs. So our material is definitely different. Now, moving on to the next question here. If someone did not clear the exams in 18 months, what happens? And how many jobs in India? Let me quickly address both of these. First of all, yes, you're right. There is an 18-month timeline. But the 18-month timeline is on the remaining 3 papers. So that gives you a total period of 2 years. And if you can't become a CPA in 2 years, then something's gone grossly wrong. This is a 1-year course. At most you take a year and a half, which is why I did not even address the 18-month timeline, because to us it's just not relevant. But let me say this. Say for example, you gave your first exam for FAR and you cleared it, and now the 18-month rule applies. So AICPA says you've got 18 months to clear the remaining 3 exams. Now, you sat for the exams or you couldn't sit for the exams because you weren't well, there were some other issues, and for 18 months you did nothing. Or let's say for 18 months, you only could give 1 more exam, so you gave audit. After the 18 months have passed on, the only thing that elapses is the FAR score, the first paper you gave. The audit exam remains active. The audit exam remains active for 18 months. Let's say after the date of clearing the audit exam, you still don't give an exam for the next 18 months. At this point in time, you spent 3 years doing CPA and you've only given 2 exams, then both the credits will expire. But if you go at this pace, it's really not worth it. I don't recommend it at all. We want to try and make you a CPA in 1 year, but if that doesn't happen, we want to do it in a year and a half. There is no way that we even want to stretch this to 2 years, let alone 3 years. So the 18-month rule is fine, but you don't have to be bothered by it, because for most ordinary candidates, it's not a hassle at all. Okay. So basically anyone can go for this exam despite their background. What about if they're already taking 10 lakh salary but in direct taxation? Will going for US CPA be a fruitful one? First of all, let me say this very clearly. No, sir. Anybody can't become a CPA. If you're a BCom honors graduate and you do not have the required accounting credits, you will need to study more to start to apply. Anybody can go for the Indian qualifications. वहाँ पे ये रूल रहता है कि घुसना आसान है, निकलना मुश्किल है. हमारे यहाँ ये हिसाब है सर, घुसना जो है वो मुश्किल है. आपको 120 क्रेडिट मिनिमम चाहिए, लाइसेंस लेने के लिए 150 चाहिए. बट फिर उसके बाद निकलना आसान हो जाता है. 50% पास रेट है. दिस इज द डिफरेंस. नाउ if you're making 10 lakhs of salary, I would say there is a lot more scope here to improve your salary. Unless this is your 10 lakh salary per month, I don't think it is. With that being said, there is a lot of scope for improvement. US CPA will be very fruitful, especially if you're in taxation, indirect taxation, because the idea is if you're looking at only working in India, only working in your firm, perhaps this is not for you. But if you're looking to grow and you want to grow your career outside of India or at MNCs within India, you want to work with a EY, a KPMG or a Deloitte, your experience is relevant because regulation is a subject we teach, right? So US regulation with your regulation experience or your taxation experience is a perfect combo. You would be able to then shift into tax advisory, US tax advisory instantly. And since you're already drawing 10 lakhs in salary, your salary would be upwards from here. It would not go lower. It would only increase. Also, CPA is a entity you keep with you. It's something you keep with you for the rest of your life. It's a degree. It's not just a piece of paper, right? It's something you keep with you forever. So the returns increase with experience, with age anyhow. And that's not just true for CPA, that's true for pretty much any education, right? आप कोई भी degree लेते हो, the results come through not just in the first year, but for the rest of your life. So this is a decision you're taking for the rest of your life. To become a CPA is to carry this with you forever. Okay, we've also been asked a question. My plan is to pursue MSc Accounts and Finance in UK. Will CPA help me to secure a job there? Okay, I'm not sure how MSc and CPA are linked together. You're very welcome to do your course in the UK. I can tell you how CPA works. Now, a lot of people have this misconception कि CPA तो अमेरिका की डिग्री है तो अमेरिका में ही नौकरियाँ होती होंगी इसकी. But that's absolutely not true. Soon enough on our website, we've got a few experts who've spoken to us, and soon enough on our website, we'll be updating those videos. One of the ladies there is currently working in UK. She's a CPA, she's working in Deloitte UK. How is a CPA employed in UK? Why is a CPA employed in UK? Because UK maybe, there are places like Jersey Island, which are tax havens. आयरलैंड में एप्पल ने अपनी बहुत बड़ी टैक्स हेवन बना रखी है. Apple is an American company. It will always need to submit its financial statements per US GAAP. They will always need CPAs to convert the local GAAP into US GAAP. Always. Which is why this lady who is a friend of mine, she's a CPA, she's working in UK. Because you don't need to be in America. You need to have an American company in your country to offer jobs to CPAs. Similarly, India में अगर American company काम कर रही है और कर रही है, कहीं कर रही है, you name a brand, most likely it is American. They will need to pay taxes in India. They will need to build financial statements per India. तो चार्ट अकाउंटेंट लगेंगे उनके. But ये कर लेने के बाद at the end of the year, they will want to claim the tax credit for it, and they will want to consolidate the financial statements in the US in dollars and per US GAAP. वो CPA ही कर सकता है, which is why you need CPAs no matter where you are, which is why CPAs are employable not just in the US or in Canada, but in UK, in Ireland, in Australia, in New Zealand, in UAE. You name a major economy, most likely CPAs are working there. Now, I also had a question here that came through which said how many CPAs are being built in India. So I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble here. Right, so it says how many CPAs do we build or do we produce in India? So let me be very honest here. So far in India, there are about 10,000 CPAs. You compare that with 2.5 lakh chartered accountants. We're only 10,000. बड़ी थोड़ में हम. Which is why I said there are more jobs right now than there are CPAs. Because 10,000 for a population of 1.2 billion people is nothing. And we're growing. We're 1.3 at the moment already. Sorry, we're not even 1.2, we're 1.3, and we're growing. And with that being said, 10,000 is nothing, but that's all there is in India. CPAs are very limited, are scarce, and as a result, because we are scarce, we are in demand. Imagine a situation where you have 50,000 CPAs produced every year, and you only have 20,000 jobs. It won't be worth it. It's worth it because of this fact that we're limited quantity of people who are doing this, actually passing the exams, and we've got more job opportunities available. Okay, Miles is claiming 90% pass rate for their students. What a big joke and misleading stat. I am so glad, sir, that you said this. Absolutely. The global pass percentage is 50%. People from Japan, people from China are giving their exams, and then the global pass percentage is 50%. Did you know that there are more people of genius level IQ living in China than there are people of any kind living in America? And despite that, the global pass percentage is 50%. So how could an institute in India claim a 90% pass rate? They've clearly pulled this number out of their imagination. It's not a real number. Please don't be misled by it. And also, let me say this very clearly. It does not matter how other people perform or how other people pass their exams. What really matters is what you feel when you're preparing for the exams. Are you comfortable with what you're doing? Are you understanding the concept? If you are and you're able to give the time, you will pass through. That is the point here. So pass percentages are meaningless, and I for one have never calculated a pass percentage and put it on my website for this very reason. A pass percentage is like a resume. It shows what I've done. It doesn't show that I can continue to do it or that I will be good at this job. It's just a reference of what I've done in the past. That's it. Do we have any more questions, Mohit?
CPA Australia and ICA agreement.
Okay, CPA Australia and ICAI agreement. Okay, so yes, ICAI and CPA Australia do have an agreement, and this is called a mutual recognition agreement. CPA America or AI CPA also has an MRA with CPA Australia. From the standpoint of MRAs, and I don't mean to sound crude at all, the Indian MRAs, the ICAI MRAs, they're fine, but they almost always require you to give an extra exam. So for you to become an Australian CPA, you need to give 2 exams at the very least. So CA कर लो, उसके बाद फिर आपको 2 एग्जाम और देने to become a CPA Australia. Meanwhile, the American CPA body, the AI CPA, because again they're the oldest, sir. They're so old. They're 133 years old, and they're one of the largest in the world. They've got a lot of power. So इन्होंने जो MRA किए हैं वो they are slightly better. You don't necessarily have to give exams. Like I said, CPA US and CPA Canada, you don't even need to give an extra exam. You just need to give the extra processing fee. That's it, and you become a CPA Canada. So for Australia, if you have a US CPA, you just need to go give an ethics exam and a regulation exam, and you're done. You have the extra degree with minimal effort. Ethics exam तो आपने वैसे भी देना ही है. So the only thing extra is the local taxation paper. That's it. So having a CPA enables you to access a lot more MRAs and at a better scale. Vis-a-vis the ICI thingy. But then again, sir, if you want to specifically pursue CPA Australia, let me be frank here and say that I do not deal with CPA Australia, I deal with CPA USA. CPA Australia की इंडिया में कोचिंग by and large नहीं होती है, but if you do find for it, I'm sure you'll find something, and it will be a new path. It's not the beaten road. So there won't be any materials made for it. You'll have to go through it on your own, but I'm sure if you wanted to, you could. So if that is your goal, आपको 4 पेपर नहीं 2 ही पेपर देके बनना है, CPA ऑस्ट्रेलिया बनना है आपने, तो I suggest you take a different direction. I'll be honest about it. Any other questions?
No, we need to move.
Okay.
So do we have to pay 1450 in one exam, in one exam, in one attempt?
क्या चीज़?
Do we have to pay 140 each for one exam if we are going one exam in one attempt?
No. You got to pay the fee in 4 parts. So can we move back to the fee slide, please, Mohit?
Sure.
So somebody asked a question about the fee. Let me just quickly solve this, and then we'll move on to the whiteboard. I've been dying to go back to the whiteboard. I'm so cropped out in this image here. Okay, so with that being said, no, you do not need to pay the entire fee all at once. You pay the fee in 4 parts. So that's 950 divided by 4, 1426 divided by 4. And every time you give an exam, you pay the fee for that exam. You do not pay the fee for the whole set. Okay, I hope that sufficiently answers your question. Shall we move on now?
Yeah.
Then let's get out of the screen share. Let's move on back to the whiteboard. All right, so this right here is what we do. Salman, could we adjust the lens a little? I think the view isn't clear. Could we adjust this so that we're zoomed in into the board? Yeah, this is better. Okay, stay on the camera, you might need to pan it. Guys, just give me 1 second. I am thirsty. I need some water. All right, we're back online. Thank you for being patient. So, now, as promised, I wanted to talk about a small topic, and I wanted to actually give you a sample of how we teach in the classroom using our whiteboard. So, I want to talk about activity-based costing because it's a fairly simple topic. Most people will understand it. Mohit, you seem worried. What's up?
Can you please check everybody can see you?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good. Okay. So, I want to talk about activity-based costing. Now, before we move on talking about activity-based costing in any kind of detail, we need to first understand costing, why we do costing, the traditional form of costing, and then we'll get to this. So let's say I sell markers. That's what I do. I sell markers. And to make these markers and then sell them, I need a factory. So I pay $10,000 in rent per year. So I pay $10,000 in rent per year. अभी जो 10,000 का rent है, this needs to be recovered from the customer because this is a rent for the factory, it's a production expense, and the customer needs to pay me. But how do I charge each individual customer of each individual marker with this 10,000 rent? One option is I go with the number of products I'm selling. So you would say, sir, आपने जितने मार्कर बनाए हैं वो यहाँ लिख दो, डिवाइड हो जाएगा पर मार्कर. But problem ये है कि साल की शुरुआत में मुझे ये तो पता है how much rent I need to pay because I've got a deed, because I've got a rental agreement with my landlord, and I'm sure on what I have to pay. But I'm never sure on what I'm going to produce because production depends on so many factors. It depends on people doing their jobs well. It depends on machines not breaking down or unnatural causes which could disrupt my production should not occur. All of these things make it a volatile situation. I will never exactly be able to predict the number of units I produce. But I could set a target. So let's say I want to make 2,000 markers. And to make 2,000 markers, I need 1 hour each per marker. So I know that I need to work for 2,000 hours. These are my 2,000 hours, direct labor hours. So 2,000 direct labor hours will help me produce 2,000 markers. So let's say I say 2,000. When I divide this with 2,000, I get a rate of $5 per hour. So now I know अगर मैंने black marker बनाया for which it takes me 2 hours, and I made a red marker which requires 1 hour, and I made a blue marker which requires 3 hours. I know how much rent do I need to charge because all I will do is I'll go 2 hours into 5 into 5 into 5. मुझे पता चल जाएगा 15 इससे लेने हैं, 5 इससे लेने हैं और 10 इससे लेने हैं. सो मान लो मार्कर की कॉस्ट 5 रुपए आ रही थी बिफोर रेंट, तो आफ्टर रेंट ब्लैक मार्कर की कॉस्ट हो जाएगी 5 प्लस 10 15. रेड वाले मार्कर की हो जाएगी 5 प्लस 5 10. ब्लू वाले मार्कर की हो जाएगी 15 प्लस 10 25. सो द आइडिया इज, और 15 प्लस 5 20. सो द आइडिया इज रेंट कितना अप्लाई होना है इज क्लियर नाउ on an individual basis simply because I divided my cost by the labor hours. This exercise is called traditional costing. This is traditional costing. In a traditional costing system, we use a single cost driver. ये 2000 single cost driver है. The single cost driver usually is direct labor hours. So I need costing so that I can figure out how much to charge each customer, and I use traditional costing where I have a single cost driver. Yani ki if this is rent, I'll use direct labor hours. If this is water, I'll still use direct labor hours. If this is utilities of other nature like electricity, I'll still use labor hours. If this is material handling, I'll still use labor hours. It doesn't matter. No matter what it is, I'll use a single cost driver. What is a cost driver? Well, a cost driver is like a car driver. Car driver का काम है गाड़ी आगे बढ़ाना, cost driver का काम है cost आगे बढ़ाना. So cost driver is the reason why cost is being incurred. क्योंकि ये 2000 घंटे मैंने काम करना है, इसलिए मुझे फैक्ट्री का 10,000 रेंट देना पड़ेगा. So it's a cost driver. Under traditional costing, we use a single cost driver. Now, traditional costing मस्त है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है उसमें, except if you've got two products, then there is a problem. So if I've got only one product, I can divide all my costs, combine them together, divide them by labor hours, and I would know how much overhead to be charging to each product per hour. And that's cool. That's totally fine. But let's say I've got two products. One of the products is a high volume product, which is labor intensive to build. The other product is a high cost, capital intensive product, जिसमें labor कम लगती है. Now what happens? Because I've been dividing cost on the basis of direct labor hours and only direct labor hours, जो कैपिटल इंटेंसिव प्रोडक्ट है, जो कैपिटल ज़्यादा इस्तेमाल कर रहा है, उसको कॉस्ट नहीं लगेगी, उसको कॉस्ट कम लगेगी. और जो बेचारा लेबर इंटेंसिव प्रोडक्ट है, which is not as expensive, it doesn't require as much capital, but because it has the most amount of labor, the cost allocated to that product will be higher. So activity based costing ये कहता है that for every activity you should identify its individual cost driver and divide the cost accordingly. So let me very quickly here take up an example from the book, and I think somebody's asked a question. Is that the case?
No. So Saurabh has something.
Okay, that's just a compliment I've received. Thank you so much for that. Okay, fine. So guys, if you have any questions for me specifically, please raise your hand. Mohit will unmute you and you'll be able to talk to me directly, like on an intercom. Okay, so let me quickly rub this off, and now let's talk about a comprehensive example. Sorry, my bad. Let's talk about a comprehensive example. Now, I do realize that most of you guys don't have a book because this is a demo session, and if you had the book, you would be able to see the example. And unfortunately, despite all the modern technology, there isn't a way for me to share the example with you while I continue to teach on the board. So you're going to have to bear with me. I'll read the example here and you can listen to it. And then we'll draw the whole thing up on the board anyhow. So it says sample company is an audio manufacturing company that manufactures two products. वही बात होगी, दो प्रोडक्ट आ गए तो एक्टिविटी बेस्ड कॉस्टिंग लगनी शुरू हो जाती है. सो देयर आर टू प्रोडक्ट्स, वन इज अ सुपर बेस स्पीकर, द अदर इज अ सुपर क्लियर स्पीकर. Currently they use a traditional accounting system, traditional cost accounting system, and apply overheads to their products based on direct labor hours. तो ट्रेडिशनल कॉस्टिंग में ही होता है, डायरेक्ट लेबर आवर्स के बेसिस पे हम कॉस्ट लगाते हैं. ठीक है. Here is some detail that we need to start noting down on. First, let me draw this on the board. You got different activities, so I'll note down the activities here very quickly. Salman, you might want to pan the camera, right? Okay, so if you're not able to read this, that's not the camera's fault, that's my fault. My writing is pretty horrible. But what I've written is activity, material handling, production orders, product redesign and plant utilities. These are the activities that have been given to us. ये activities हैं, overhead जिनके basis पे बढ़ रहा है. इन activities की कुछ costs है वो हमको given है. Let me also write those down. I'll need black pen for that. There it is. Material handling costs $480,000. Production orders cost $60,000. Product redesign costs $800,000 and plant utilities are worth $460,000. So if I was to total this up, it would become $1.8 million. So $1.8 million की overheads हैं हमारे पास and we want to now divide these overheads between two different products. Product is super clear speakers, or actually super bass speakers and super clear speakers, right? Now this brings me on to the fact that इस example में super bass speaker, super clear speaker बोलने में पढ़ने में दिक्कत हो रही है. Now it was William Shakespeare who said, "What's in the name?" So similarly, when it comes to the CPA exams and there are these product names or company names, what's in the name? It doesn't matter. You could also call this product A and product B. We don't have to be worried about the names as long as the information that comes to us is clear. So product A and B bhi chalega. Now, we've been told the total cost is 1.8 million and the labor hours, the direct labor hours, I'm going to use a blue pen for this to make things easier. I am audible, right, Mohit? The audio feed is correct? Fine, good. For the direct labor hours, we've got 220,000 hours for product A and 280,000 hours for product B. So if we are to use traditional costing, we've got 1.8 million, we've got direct labor hours. So traditional costing कर लेते हैं, सब कुछ नोट करने से पहले traditional costing कर लेते हैं एक बार, और end में result compare करने में आसानी रहेगी हमें. So I'm going to write this down in red. We've got traditional costing system. We've got $1.8 million of cost and we shall divide it on the basis of labor hours. We've got a total of 500,000 labor hours. तो अपना रेट बड़ा सिंपल है, 3.6 as I suspected, $3.6 per direct labor hour. Now this is fine, 3.6 का रेट निकल आया. This rate is called the predetermined overhead rate, PDOH, predetermined overhead rate, PDOH rate. So that's fine. Now I have this, but this doesn't do much for me. This tells me overhead किस rate पे लगना है. I want to find out products पे cost कैसे लगेगी. So product A and then product B. A के लिए 3.6 into how many hours? 220,000 hours. B के लिए it is 3.6 into 280,000 hours. So another great thing I'd like to mention here for people who are doing this for the first time, if you've noticed, ये system थोड़ा change हो गया. I'm using 3 commas and then three digits before I put in a comma. This is the American system. India में 2,20,000 है. US में this is $220,000. So I know it's very basic what I'm telling you and you probably already know this. But if you don't, we've changed it because these are the figures you're going to be looking at. It's always going to be millions, it's always going to be billions, it's always going to be 100,000s. And for the purpose of CPA, we need you to be exceptionally fluent with this. फिर पेपर पास करने में आसानी हो जाती है, वरना आदमी कॉमा में परेशान हो जाता है. And I've seen that happen, so I'm just warning you guys for it. Now, you got 3.6 into 220,000, 3.6 into 280. Basically हमने rate लिया और कितने hours उन्होंने काम किया. बट दिस विल गिव मी द टोटल कॉस्ट. मुझे ये भी नहीं चाहिए, मुझे कॉस्ट पर यूनिट चाहिए. सो आई एम गोइंग टू डिवाइड दिस बाय द नंबर ऑफ यूनिट्स दैट वी हैव प्रोड्यूस्ड. सो दैट इन्फॉर्मेशन इज गिवन टू अस एज वेल. प्रोडक्शन वॉल्यूम, आई एम गोइंग टू से दिस वॉल्यूम. So product A has 50,000 and product B is 25,000. So I'm going to divide this by 50,000. I'm going to divide this by 25,000. And as a result, I'm going to get a figure here, which will be the individual rates for each of these. I'm going to write those down. So I'm not going to do the mental math on that. I'm not that good, but it's already been done for me. So I'm going to say here $15.42. Sorry, 84, my bad, 15.84, and we've got $40.32. So under traditional costing हमारे पास ये दो रेट्स आ गए. प्रोडक्ट बी की कॉस्ट 15.84 पड़ रही है, प्रोडक्ट ए की कॉस्ट 15.4 है, प्रोडक्ट बी की कॉस्ट 40.32 है. Fair enough. Salman, we're going to want to move this to that side. Now on this side of the board here, let's do the activity based costing for this. So I'm going to make the notes here and then I'm going to do the costing calculations there. So I'll use the black pen for this. Now this is good, traditional costing angle से ये बात हो गई है, ये अच्छी बात है. But when we talk about activity based costing, and I want to move back down to this section here, we want to identify a cost driver for each activity. So we've got material handling. For material handling की कॉस्ट क्यों आ रही है? सामान उठाने की, रखने की, लेबर की कॉस्ट क्यों आ रही है? Because we've used material. So pounds और LBS, वेट. मटेरियल का जो वेट है वो मेरे लिए इस एक्टिविटी का कॉस्ट ड्राइवर है. जितना मटेरियल बढ़ेगा उतनी कॉस्ट बढ़ेगी. प्रोडक्शन ऑर्डर्स, इसके लिए नंबर ऑफ ऑर्डर्स, जितने नंबर ऑफ ऑर्डर्स बढ़ेंगे उतनी प्रोडक्शन ऑर्डर की कॉस्ट बढ़ेगी, तो ये उसका कॉस्ट सेंटर हो गया. सिमिलरली कॉस्ट ड्राइवर हो गया. सिमिलरली फॉर प्रोडक्ट रीडिजाइन, नंबर ऑफ चेंजेस, जितनी बार आप चेंज करोगे प्रोडक्ट में उतनी बार आपकी कॉस्ट बढ़ेगी. एंड देन लास्टली प्लांट यूटिलिटीज. प्लांट यूटिलिटीज क्यों हो रही है? बत्ती का पानी का खर्चा क्यों है? क्योंकि मशीन जो है वो चल रही है. सो नंबर ऑफ मशीन आवर्स. ना फॉर प्लांट यूटिलिटीज जरूरी नहीं आप मशीन आवर्स ही लो, हो सकता है आप कोई और मेथड ले लो. प्लांट यूटिलिटी के लिए डायरेक्ट लेबर आवर्स भी बहुत बढ़िया. इफ योर utilities are only being spent on the labor, not on the machines. But if it's on the machines, तो machine सबसे ज़्यादा बत्ती खा रही होगी, which is why we said machine hours. Now let's pan back over to this side and note down the details that have been given to us. I'll use a black pen for that. We've got volume, we've got direct labor hours, number of orders. So I'll go orders, or rather I should go pounds first and then orders, right? We've got pounds, orders, changes and machine hours. और ये information मेरे को given है, so I'm going to just quickly write it down. Pounds में I've got 40,000 pounds used by product A and 20,000 pounds used by product B. Production orders में I've got 200 orders and 400 orders. I've got 10 changes for A and 30 changes for B. I've got 150,000 hours of machines used for product A and 50,000 hours of machines used for product B. ये information मेरे को आ गई. Now if you've noticed already, activity based costing के लिए हमें extra information चाहिए थी. When it came to standard information, which is this 220 this direct labor hours, this was all that was needed for traditional costing. इसके ऊपर और कुछ नहीं चाहिए था. But we needed extra information when we started to do activity based costing. मैं इसके बारे में अभी थोड़ी डिटेल में बात करूंगा. But let me first perform the calculations for you very quickly. So करना यही है, कॉस्ट को कॉस्ट ड्राइवर से डिवाइड करना है. बट लाइक यू टिल्ट दिस, पैन दिस डाउन हियर, करना वही है. बट द आइडिया इज For each activity we'll use its own cost driver. So activity पहली क्या हो गई? नंबर 1 मटेरियल हैंडलिंग की कॉस्ट है $480,000 और उसके लिए कॉस्ट ड्राइवर क्या हो गया? वॉल्यूम. This was supposed to be pounds, yeah, right. So that's number 1. So I'll put it down here. I'll say number 1, number 2, number 3 and number 4. So we're looking at pounds. We said 60,000 pounds. नंबर 2 क्या हो गया जी? नंबर 2 हो गया प्रोडक्शन ऑर्डर्स. 60,000 के प्रोडक्शन ऑर्डर आए हैं एंड वो डिवाइड होंगे बाय 600 प्रोडक्शन ऑर्डर्स इन टोटल. नंबर 3 इज $800,000 spent on product redesigns for a total of 40 changes. And number 4 is $460,000 spent on utilities for a total of 200,000 hours. So if you look at this calculation right here, what you realize is बजाय कि एक रेट आने के अब 4 रेट आएंगे. So for 480 which is our material, we've got $8 per pound. For 60 by 600 we've got $100 per order. For this we've got $20,000 per change or per redesign. And then for this we've got in the end $2.3, right? $2.3 per hour. So now you see instead of one rate we've got 4 different rates. But रेट निकाल लेने से बात नहीं खत्म हो जाती, हमें तो कॉस्ट निकालनी है प्रोडक्ट ए और प्रोडक्ट बी की, तो वो निकालते हैं. सो यू गॉट प्रोडक्ट ए एंड यू गॉट प्रोडक्ट बी. प्रोडक्ट ए का चार्ज लगेगा $8 इंटू x 1 2 3 and 4. तो 8 into how many hours did this guy use? 40,000, right? So 8 into 40,000. Then you've got $100 into 200 orders. Then you've got $20,000 into how many did this guy use? 10 changes. And then you've got $2.3 into 150,000 hours. This is just for product A. Similarly for product B, it's going to be $8, $100, $20,000 and $2.3 into इसकी फिगर्स क्या है वो भी देख लेते हैं. $8 into 20,000 units or 20,000 pounds of material. $100 into 400 changes. $20,000 into 30 changes, and lastly we've got $2.3 into 50,000 hours. Now you're welcome to solve this on your calculators. In the CPA exams you will be allowed to bring home with you to bring to the exam with you calculators, so you'll be able to do this on a simple standard Casio calculator जो होता है. The calculation is already done for me. I would say the total for this is 655,000 and the total for this is 1,145,000. Now if you add these two figures together, ये total बनेगा 1.8 million. ये total अभी भी 1.8 million ही बनेगा. If you were to take up just 3.6 into 220, 3.6 into 280, इन दोनों का फिगर्स का टोटल भी 180 ही बनेगा या 1.8 मिलियन ही बनेगा, बिकॉज इस 1.8 मिलियन को इन 2 प्रोडक्ट्स में एलोकेट करना था, तो टोटल वही बैठना चाहिए, एंड दैट्स फाइन. नाउ टू वेरी क्विकली टॉक अबाउट दिस, यू वुड हैव टू डिवाइड दिस बाय द नंबर ऑफ यूनिट्स. सो नंबर ऑफ यूनिट्स क्या है? So production volume is already given to me 50 and 25, so I'm going to say divide this by 50,000, divide this by 25,000, and then we'll be getting our rate. So our rate is 13.10. Is this visible, Salman, on the bottom? Okay, let's take it up a little. So you've got यहाँ जो यार product A, which is 655,000 divide by 50,000 units equals to 13.10, and then you've got product B, which is 1,145,000 divided by 25,000, which is equal to 46.80 dollars. Now this is where we are going to start to make those comparisons. 46.80 एक तरफ और $13.10 एक तरफ versus the original figures we got here. So if you look at this, you'll find out traditional costing के हिसाब से product A almost $16 का है, product B जो है वो almost $40 का है. But when I did activity based costing, I realized product A तो $13 के आसपास का है और product B जो है वो $47 का है. अब सच्चाई ये है कि जो प्रोडक्ट्स बिक रहे हैं उनकी प्रोडक्शन वॉल्यूम भी उस हिसाब से ही होती है. तो प्रोडक्ट भी कम बिकता है इसलिए सिर्फ 25,000 यूनिट बन रहे हैं. प्रोडक्ट ए ज़्यादा बिकता है इसलिए उसके 50,000 यूनिट्स हैं. ऑल्सो वेरी क्लियरली फ्रॉम द फैक्ट्स ये दिख रहा है मेरे को कि प्रोडक्ट ए जो है वो सस्ता प्रोडक्ट है, उसकी कॉस्टिंग कम है तो उसका मार्जिन भी कम होगा, उसका प्राइस भी कम होगा, इसलिए वो सस्ता वो बिकता ज़्यादा है. बट वॉट आई एम रियलाइजिंग नाउ इज दैट द कॉस्टिंग दैट आई डिड बेस्ड ऑन लेबर आवर्स वॉज स्क्यूड. इट वॉजंट करेक्ट, स्क्यूड रिजल्ट आया वो. मेरे को $16 का इंप्रेशन पड़ रहा था प्रोडक्ट ए का. When the truth of the matter is I've got a comparative advantage. Maybe I'm better than everybody else in the market because I can do this for 13.10. तो जो प्रोडक्ट मेरा ज़्यादा बिकता है उसमें मेरे को कॉस्ट कम पड़ती है, ये क्लैरिटी मुझे एक्टिविटी बेस्ड कॉस्टिंग करने के बाद ही आएगी. So एक्टिविटी बेस्ड कॉस्टिंग के जो एडवांटेजेस हैं, द सिंपल एडवांटेज, द सिंपल फैक्ट इज नंबर 1, इट्स मोर प्रिसाइज. इट्स जस्ट अ लॉट मोर प्रिसाइज व्हेन इट कम्स टू डिवाइडिंग द कॉस्ट्स. Similarly, number 2 is when we talk about activity based costing, the second point is it's a little bit more complex to perform, but it helps with one basic feature. It's called identifying the non-value added services. So let's talk about the part here on the board. Salman, would you please pen? Right, so we've got these various parts here, all of these services, and not all of them are value added. On the board we realized production design जो है, product redesign जो है, $20,000 per change पड़ रहा है हमें. It's such a huge capital cost per change. 40 changes में 800,000 की cost बन गई है. So now the management will have to be able to identify or will have to identify how many of these guys realistically or how many of these changes do we realistically need. Value कहाँ तक add हो रही है और कहाँ नहीं हो रही है. Value added services are services which add value to your product. If the speakers are sounding better after the redesign, that's a value added service, value added activity. But if the speakers just look different, they don't sound any better, there's no real value added there, then it's not a value added activity. The management will now be able to analyze these costs and take a decision based on it. So with that, I'm happy to conclude activity based costing. Costing कैसे करनी है वो तो simple step है. You have to divide cost with its cost driver. But to get into detail and understand the concept is necessary, and more importantly to practice it on the online test bank, to practice the application of the concept is most important for CPA. With that, I hope you have understood what we were offering. I see many participants here are wanting to take a break or leave for the day, and so we shall. There is an exit poll. So in the end, I think there are just a couple of things left to ask you. Mohit, please bring up the poll. Please fill this in, and then we will open up for question and answers if there are any. If there aren't, you're very welcome to leave. Done, Mohit? Okay, all right. So thank you for filling in the details and for letting us know how you rate this session. I hope you had a reasonably good time. I hope you enjoyed what we've told you today, or at least found some value in it. If there are any questions, please now is the time to let us know. If not, we will close the session.
2 people raised their hands.
So 2 people have raised their hands. Mohit has identified both of them. Please let me know if there are any questions. You will be unmuted and you will be given the choice to unmute yourself. All right, Mr. Binod, you seem to have a question for us.
I have understood the concept of
I'm sorry, you wanted some regulatory parts to be demonstrated for activity based costing. Sorry. Okay, I see what you're saying. So this topic specifically that we did here is a simple topic, and we wanted to do a simple topic so that people who are just graduates will also grasp the concept. If you want a demo on how the regulation works in the US, the US federal taxation हमारा subject है, which is regulation. In that we get into this detail. Now I can give you a brief overview instantly in the next 2 minutes, and I'll do that. Ideally, when we talk about taxation in the US, we're talking about federal taxation. So US में 2 type की taxations है. एक federal level पे है जो central government की tax है, और फिर एक state level पे होता है. We in the CPA exam do not get into individual state laws. We just don't, and that's because state taxation is usually added on as a cess on your form 1040. Form 1040 is the form for an individual's tax return. Now in the regulation subject, sir, we will be covering individual taxation, taxation of C corporations, which are complex companies, S corporations, which are simple corporations or private limited corporations के equivalent जो चीज़ हो जाती है. We'll be talking about NPO and non-governmental organizations and how they are taxed, and then we'll be talking about business laws towards the end of regulation. ये course content हम cover करते हैं sir in regulation. And I am sorry I'm not going to be able to run through an entire topic here because I feel the time is up. But yes, regulation classes will be beginning, and I hope when you do join us there, you will get a detailed understanding of each subject, each topic. Does that adequately answer your question, Binod sir?
Yeah.
Thank you. We have another question? All right. So we're done for the day. Thank you so much everybody for attending this class, attending this session. I hope you have a great day ahead. All right, bye-bye.